Hello, my name is Terry. We'll be going over the second ghost hunt from Tri-County for 2015. The first thing I'd like to talk about is some things that were going on. Many people were reporting that they were being physically touched. This has happened in the past and it's not uncommon, but the quantity of it is highly unusual. People were reporting things like being touched on their back, to others who felt like something was touching their hair. Some of them reported it felt like they were walking through cobwebs. Being physically touched at Tri-County is common, but it doesn't usually occur to this many people on one event. This was highly unusual. One interesting event happened early before the ghost hunt got underway. A state trooper stopped by. This isn't the first time we've had state troopers stop in and tell us things that are going on. This one recorded a story that was very interesting. He told us that years ago, a big rig had pulled in and a trucker had gotten out. He was handicapped, he had one leg, and when he got out of this rig, a passing car struck and hit him and killed him. We suspected that there were many deaths on the property, more so than what we've so far found. Because of the age of the property, documentation is poor on many of the stories. So this just adds more to what we've already suspected, because we believe that the property surrounding Tri-County is haunted. We're getting reports that the Dollar Tree, which is just up the street, 300 feet away, people are encountering paranormal activity at that location. And I've been scratched on the property in the parking lot. So I do know that things do happen, not just inside the building, but outside of it as well. The first thing to occur happened very early in the evening. This was around 10 or 11 o'clock at night. Down in the basement, we were moving some equipment around and it was creating some noise. Well, apparently something manipulated all of these sounds to produce a voice. It was an insulting voice that said idiot. We have no idea who it was intended for or what it meant, but apparently someone was able to use these sounds and modify them to produce a voice. If you listen very carefully, it's quite loud. This is louder than the typical EVP, and it is an EVP. The ghost boxes haven't yet been turned on this evening. The next voice also occurred in the cellar. This one is almost spoken in two voices. There's the first word is help, and it's a very truncated abbreviation. You can barely make out what it's saying. But the word help, there's a slight delay, and then the word me, which is much more clearly spoken at the end. This is also an EVP recording.
Yeah, I'll list that down.
This is the third EVP captured in the cellar. This one sounds like a female, and it's saying, "I'm here." No one heard this when this was recorded. This is typical of EVP recordings. The next event to happen in the cellar is very common at this location. A loud crashing sound from upstairs. And in typical tradition, every single time I go upstairs to find out what the cause is, I interview everyone upstairs and no one has heard anything. Nobody has heard where this came from. We have no idea. I can't find anyone upstairs who actually heard this happen. On occasion, people will say that they've heard it, but they can't pin down where it came from, which is odd because it's so loud downstairs. When I returned downstairs, I explained to everyone in the basement what had happened upstairs, that nobody could account for it. If you listen into the next clip very carefully, there's a voice in it. At the end of it, it says, like Potosi. This is extremely interesting. Potosi is another place where a similar event occurs with a regularity, not quite as much as Tri-County, but it does occur where you hear something in the attic of the Long Bantha mansion, and people downstairs will either hear nothing or they will say that it came from upstairs. But this happens while we're in the attic with our equipment running. It's definitely not coming from the attic, but everyone who's downstairs swears that it's coming from upstairs when they do hear it. But this voice piping up, like Potosi, this is very interesting because it means it knows what's going on. And I have an idea how it learned how this happened. We brought with us a Sony voice recorder, and we're playing back some sounds that were recorded on the voice recorder from Potosi. Apparently it had gathered enough knowledge from listening in on the conversation of this voice recorder that it was able to comment on what it had happened inside Potosi's investigation. That loud crash that everyone heard earlier, upstairs everyone said they didn't hear a thing. Nothing. They said it's dead quiet. No. The next voice to be captured is of a man screaming. It sounds quite distant. None of us were screaming during this investigation, so it's none of our group. This is another unexplained voice that we can't account for at Tri-County. The next event also occurred in the cellar. This is an interactive event. If you'll notice on the screen on the lower left-hand side, a series of lights turning on. This is a millimeter with a shadow detector. No light is being turned on, yet the lights on the shadow detector are going off, indicating a change of brightness that we're not perceiving with our eyes. At this time that this is going on, a voice says, "the light." Then the lights on the millimeter come on a second time. This may be indicating that it's trying to communicate to us through the turning on and off of the lights of the millimeter, manipulating the device. Yes. In the next clip, someone is panning the room with a flashlight, which is triggering the millimeter's shadow detection device. So that is not a paranormal event. That is just the flashlight triggering the device. But what is interesting is the voice that occurs. You'll first hear the word name, indicating that it's going to be providing a person's name. There's a pause, and then it says the name Ken. Ken was present at this investigation in the cellar at the time this was recorded. It was commenting on who was present during this investigation, providing positive identification that it knew who was in among our group, and providing a name confirming that it was aware of what we were doing. It said Ken. Thank you. The next piece of evidence is inconclusive. If you look at the top left-hand side of the screen, there's a white light moving about. The only source of light in the room is a green laser. It's aimed straight ahead, and this light is off to the side, which is almost beyond the range of the laser. At first I thought there's a possibility that if an insect moved in front of the laser, that it could trigger these flashing lights. But the thing is it's almost beyond the range of the laser. It's almost too far to the left. So this is an inconclusive piece of evidence. We'll have to do more testing with insects and lasers to see if there's a possibility that this could be an insect. The next clip is very interesting. While no one was present in the basement, everyone had gone upstairs. We left a voice recorder unattended downstairs. You'll hear the voice from the ghost box say, "Help." And then from within the basement, you'll start to hear a pounding sound, like something is pounding on ductwork. This sound was not accounted for by any of us upstairs. We don't know what the source of this is. For this investigation, I brought 2 boxes to conduct the box test. That's when I take an object, I tell no one what the contents are, wrap it up, and bring it to the investigation. I hold the package in my hand, and I ask the question, what's inside the box? Almost immediately, even before we'd had a chance to really get settled in, we got a reply. Inside the box, I had a funeral box for my cat. The cat's name is Sir Wilfrid. It was immediately able to answer the name, and it did so twice. The first is in a very strange voice. It's almost as if a piano note is producing a voice. It's very poorly constructed, and it doesn't really sound like a human voice. But if you listen carefully, you can hear that it is saying Sir Wilfrid.
You saw me holding this earlier. Can you tell me? I don't believe it. It's nailed. Did you live? It's nailed.
The second voice followed almost immediately after the first. Again, it said Sir Wilfrid, but this time it was much more articulate in stating the name. It's very difficult to speak, but it was able to articulate it in much better definition than on the first attempt. What's interesting is if it had the ability to just read the name on the box, it would have gotten the name Wilfrid, the name of the cat. But it didn't know, or couldn't have known, that the cat's true name is Sir Wilfrid, that the label on the box for the funeral ashes is a mistake. The first part, the Sir, is omitted, but yet it was able to state the first name correctly, even though that's not printed on the box. Somehow it was able to figure out that the full name of the cat was Sir Wilfrid. How it did so without making contact with who knows how it did this. This is unknown how they have the capability to do these things.
It didn't just say Wilfrid. They made a mistake in the engraving on it. His real name is Sir Wilfrid. That's not even printed on there, but he said Sir Wilfrid.
Did it really?
Yeah.
Holy cow.
So it nailed, not only did it get it right, but it got the correct name. over what was on the nameplate. Because we call him Sir Wilfred.
Boy, that happened right off the bat.
Right off the bat.
On a future investigation, we're going to continue the box test but become even more elaborate. On the chance that it is somehow reading what I'm thinking and then producing the voices using the knowledge that I know, I'm going to do something I've never done before. We're going to take a box. It will be sealed by someone else, and I will not know the contents of the box. We'll be taking this down to Pythian Castle and conducting this test. I'll be asking what's inside the box, and at this investigation, absolutely no one present, including myself, will know what's inside the box. It will be interesting to see if they're still capable of answering what's in the contents of the box. After the success at the bar area with the first ghost box test, we moved the equipment over to another area, also on the main floor, about 30 or 40 feet away from the bar area where we had the first success. During this test, I asked what was in the box. I had a second box prepared with another object inside. At first I thought it was totally unsuccessful. I thought that it hadn't succeeded in naming what was inside the box and that it was a total failure. However, on playback, I discovered that it had successfully identified the contents of the box 4 times, but that none of us present actually heard it. How this happens, I'm not positive. I think it's because of all of the sounds that they produce mask a lot of the voices, and it's only on playback that you can really hear these voices. Sometimes they're so loud and clear that it sounds like a person speaking to you, but sometimes they're so badly masked by the sound that you can't hear them. Well, what I had inside was a baseball, and it successfully identified the contents on 4 times during this ghost box session, and it said baseball 4 times. 2 of the times it was so badly garbled that it was almost imperceivable. I could understand why no one would hear it. The 2 better sounding baseball replies I've got on this tape, and I've provided here for evidence.
Can you tell me what's inside?
Of all of the ghost box replies, the final one is the best. It's very clearly saying the word baseball. It's very easy to understand and it's very loud, yet we still did not hear it when this happened.
There's something in the box. Can you tell me what it is?
Whatever this entity was seemed to be getting agitated that we weren't understanding its reply, and it seemed to be getting frustrated, and it was saying some rather creative things.
What you're saying isn't related to what's in the box. Can you specifically tell me what's inside? I appreciate it.
We could tell it was getting very frustrated with us because we weren't hearing its replies, even though it was providing the correct answers. And when we asked, are you getting a little bit frustrated with us? There's a reply, and it's saying, oh yeah.
I didn't hear that.
Are you getting a little frustrated? Are you getting a little frustrated?
The next event occurred after most of our group had gone home for the evening. This was on the 2nd floor. 4 of us were present. We heard a pounding sound. We don't know where it came from, and it was very loud. The unusual thing is that the sound we heard was much louder than what was recorded. I don't know why that would be. Maybe the camera was at a far enough distance that it didn't really capture how loud it really was. But for some reason, it didn't capture the full strength of the pounding sound that we got.
Is that you?
You know what that was?
Wow, yeah, that was loud.
Yeah.
So,
We returned to the cellar to continue our investigation. Through the ghost box, it started asking questions like, "Are you married?" So apparently it's trying to gather information about the people who are attending the ghost hunt. It's very interesting that it's curious about us and it's making inquiries about the individuals who are attending the ghost hunt. The last piece of evidence was collected by the millimeter. Before I went home, I retrieved the millimeter and looked up the data that it recorded. A millimeter has the ability to record both the high and the low temperature for the evening and the strength of EMF fields. The temperature variation was within approximately 3 degrees, which was perfectly normal for the cellar, so no cold spots were indicated, but a massive spike in EMF fields that I can't account for, 44.8 milligauss. That is enormous. There's no way that it should have been detecting spikes like that. It's far beyond what any slight variation that should have taken place. A full strength signal on a ghost box being pegged out would be 10 milligauss, so that would mean that this signal was equivalent to about 4 to 5 times a pegged out ghost meter. That is an enormous spike, and this is something we can't account for because it was not placed by any man-made source. It was out in the middle of the concrete floor. It should not have recorded readings like this, so this is an unexplained event. A very powerful EMF field, far beyond what a cell phone tower or any other normal man-made source could account for.
70 degrees even is the max. 67.9 minimum temperature. 44.8 milligauss.